boys and girls, students of Buddhist Sunday School and Dhamma classes, parents and grandparents, teachers of Dhamma classes and Buddhist Sunday School, and all those who are watching the presentation or following the presentation. May you all be well, happy, and peaceful. Now we are going to continue the story of Buddha Gautama. If you remember, if you have watched, we have finished actually part 1. And we are going to continue the interesting, inspiring story of Buddha Gautama in part 2 here. Now, just to recapitulate, in case you have forgotten, the end of part 1 was actually the end of the 4 sights that Siddhartha Gautama saw an old person, and then a very sick person, and then a dead person. And the 4th sight, he saw a very serene, cultivated monk, and that actually inspired him or made him want to go out to seek the truth, to find the cause of suffering. And then, what is the end of suffering and how do we go about it to end suffering? So he actually made that sort of resolution to leave the palace and then to go and search for the truth. And it was during that time, right, that moment, you can say, where actually the news also came to him that his wife, Yasodhara, had given birth to his son, the only son, Rahula. So that made him even more difficult now to decide, right, what to do, isn't it, right? That was where we stopped. So now we will continue the story of Buddha Gautama into part 2. Now, as usual, we will have a series of slides in the PowerPoint to make it more interesting and then to help you to understand better. Now, the text of the PowerPoint are in English and Chinese, but the narration, explanation, and comments will be in English. That is the way we are going to do this presentation. Now, before we launch the PowerPoint, let me check the setup to make sure that it is correct. It is okay. So now let us launch the PowerPoint. Now you see the cover slides and the pictures that show the events that will be taking place in our part 2 of the story. Right, the part 1, you had a different set of pictures in relation to the events in part 1 now. So now we are going to move on to the story. Now, let us look at the story now. So you remember I told you that he was in a dilemma, what he had to do. The son was born. So from the day when he decided that he wanted to leave the palace, the prince had lost all interest in watching the dancing girls and other such pleasures. All the while also, he was a very contemplative person, and he really was not really interested in watching all those singing, dancing, all those sensual pleasures. And especially, he saw the 4 sights and he kept thinking about them, about sickness, aging, and then death, right? So he kept thinking, so then how to free himself from all these sufferings? That's what he used to do. And now will come the critical time. So finally he decided, and I told you, right, that that after the foresights. So he decided already that he wanted to leave the palace and his family and become a homeless monk. And the reason was to find out the truth of suffering. What is the cause of suffering and how to end suffering? That was what he had this strong determination to do, to find out, to leave the palace. So you can see here, the pictures here, that Siddhartha all the while, actually, even though the palace was filled with all these dancing girls and the singers, he was not really very interested in this. He kept thinking about what he had seen about her, aging, sickness, death, and then also about the monk that he saw meditating, that gave him a very a great peace of mind, that foresight. So now what would happen now? So we go on to the next one. So actually he decided, so he made the resolution that even though the son was just born, that he would live, right? And there have been various accounts. According to one source, the original scripture said that he actually made the decision, and then in front of his father, King Suddhodana or Raja Suddhodana, and the stepmother, you can say Mahapajapati that he would live, even though you can say parents pleaded with him not, but he just put on the yellow cloth, or you can say yellow robe, then took maybe he was ready, he even had an alms bowl already, and then he left, and they were crying. So there was this account, according to one source, that is in the scriptures. But then you find many books talk about this scene. So maybe it is just a story. But anyway, we look and see what most books say. So one night, when everyone in the palace was asleep, Siddhartha asked Chana. He already decided to leave, right? Now, Chana was actually his charioteer, his attendant also. Or maybe you see like today you have a personal, some rich people have a personal driver. So it was the charioteer at that time. They would use horse carriage or riding a horse. So he was tending to Siddhartha Chana. So he said, ask him to prepare my horse. Of course, he will leave using the horse, right? And the horse name was Kantaka. And then he went to the room. It was night time, according to this version of the story. In the night, he went to the room to have a last look at the wife Yasodhara. You could see the drawing here. And the newborn son, Rahula. You could see the Rahula here, the last look. And this one, various paintings have been done to show this scene of Siddhartha saying goodbye or leaving the wife and the son. And he was filled with loving kindness towards them and promised himself that he would come back to see them after he had found the truth. But first, he had to understand himself why all creatures suffer, the cause of suffering, and then to find out how they could escape all this dukkha or suffering. That was his mission. That was what he wanted to do. Now, of course, you see, these two pictures just show the usual, leaving the palace scene, right? That was his account. Hardly you can find a picture where Siddhartha wanted to live in the daytime in front of the parents. So this one just one aspect. And this one actually showed that he just to show that he was thinking actually, just was thinking and how to escape from suffering. Now, many people, especially people who don't understand the Dhamma very well, criticize this event. They say Siddhartha Gautama, how come he will be a future Buddha? He will become the Buddha, but yet very selfish. How can he be so terrible, so cruel, to leave the wife and the son, only born, and just to leave the palace in renunciation? But they do not understand clearly Of course, it was very painful for him, but because his love, compassion for the suffering of mankind was so great, much, much greater than the love just for the son and the wife. Now, most ordinary people would not, you see, right? They will love the wife. Of course, he still loved, but then the compassion for the suffering mankind was greater still. So it was the greatest renunciation you can think of, to sacrifice all these to find the truth so that mankind would benefit. And you must remember during that time, it was an Indian setting. So it was a comfortable home. So his wife and son would be taken care of, well taken care of. Remember? The father was Raja, right? With palace and with well attendants. So he knew that the wife and the son would be well taken care of. But remember that he also made that sort of aspiration that after he had found the truth, he would go back to them to try to spread to them the truth. All right, so how can he be selfish? We are the ones that are usually more selfish. We only think of the happiness of ourselves and our family members and so on. That is what mundane things are, mostly like that. So you must understand this is a great renunciation, right? So just to clarify for you, because many people ask this question, they don't understand deeply enough. Now let us go on to the next slide, which is slide number 4. So this version is in the silence of the night, whereas according to the original scripture, he left in the daytime. So, but important thing is that he left. He left the palace. They all agree on that. So the details could vary from source to source. Right. So in the silence of the night, Prince Siddhartha mounted the horse Kandaka, a very faithful, loyal horse. And of course, he was accompanied by his attendant, Chana, right? And one version would say that, he went in the chariot, some drawings also in the horse chariot. And some version would say that, chariot went with him on the horse, maybe another horse. Right? So it doesn't matter. Right? I think that what is important is he left and he was followed. That one consistent throughout. He was followed by Chana. Right? But actually, most versions would say that it was only one horse. Right? It was only one horse. So whether two of them went on the horse or they just walk along like that, right? Or whether it was a chariot and he was taken, doesn't matter, right? The drawings you find, you can see the different versions. So he was accompanied, that one is true, he was accompanied by Chana, the attendant, and he left the palace and the city of Kapilavatthu, where he was born around that area and then grew up. His childhood was spent in this Kapilavatthu. In the first part of the story, we discussed that also. We showed you a picture of Kapilavatthu or Kapilavastu also, another name in Sanskrit. So he went and they stopped at a river, right? They stopped at the river some distance from the city. There are rivers, in the part of northern India also. And then the prince took off his expensive dress. He was a prince, or you can say the son of a Raja, right? And normally, the description would say Prince Siddhartha, right? But he was not actually the king's son. The father was a Raja, not the final greatest king of the country. But anyway, he was of the princely caste, so he took off the expensive dress and handed over to Chana. And then he brought along the robes. Very simple, isn't it? Yellow pieces of cloth or orange, saffron. And then he put on the robes like a monk already, That was a renunciation and a thing to become a monk. So then he, of course, cut off his hair, right? Cut off his hair. Then he told Chana to take the horse back to the palace. Now, of course, Chana and the horse were very, very sad. They loved the prince very much. It was a gentle, very good prince of fantastic character, isn't it? With love, compassion, and all those. So they were very, very sad. So they didn't want to go back, like wanting to follow him also, But Siddhartha said, no, you all have to go back. I need to go out alone to seek for the truth. So, of course, the accounts would say about Chana shedding tears, crying, and also the account said that the horse also cried, was very sad. And then one account I read also, the horse was so sad that the horse died of a heartache. Died because the soul said the heart was broken, the broken heart. Well, all these are aspects of the story. But the important points are true, right? That he left and went to search for the truth alone. And Chana had to go back alone or with a horse that didn't die. The one is debatable. So now let us go on to slide number 5. Right, slide number 5. That's right. All right, slide number 5. So that time, Siddhartha was 29 years old. So the renunciation took place when he was 29. And remember, he married at a very young age of 16. And then that time when he wanted to leave the palace, the only son Rahula was born, right? So now, although while he was very contemplative about this, he was a person who used to think a lot about life, the meaning of life, why there is suffering, is there a way out, all this until after seeing the four sights, remember? So then he left and began the homeless life of a monk. You could say a monk really, that he already renounced all the things and put on the yellow robe, right? So he was the first, you can say Buddhist monk, but those days are no term Buddhist, right? So from Kapilavastu, he walked south to the city of Rajagaha. Now I've included here a map that Kapilavastu now present day is around the border of Nepal and India, the border, right? Lumbini now is under Nepal, right? But the Kapilavastu area, the northern part, you can still see at the border with Nepal, India. So that was that place. So Rajagaha is one very famous place for Buddhist pilgrimages. You have the very famous mountain called Vulture Peak. And the Buddha also spent years visiting that place, giving the teachings, and also he was, given a bamboo grove there, a sort of area, a beautiful garden, and then there were kutis there and so on. And that time there was the King Biminsara there, that country. They also have different like countries, small countries, or you want to say provinces or whatever lah, right? So that time the king of this Maganda, right, was King Bibinsara, right? And King Bibinsara, you find that later on became a very great supporter of the Buddha. And he became so he went to that place, right? He went to that place, and the morning after Siddhartha arrived, then he went to the city. There's a city in this area, Rajagaha, and then he went on Pindapat, right? Went arms round. So that time he was alone, he hadn't got enlightenment yet, and he went begging for food, arms round so you could say. But he was, very, very serene and, so gentle and all, So people would give food also, lah. So the king Bimbisara asked him to stay, right? Asked him to stay. Later on you see. But then he decided to, still wander around to find the truth. He wouldn't want to stay at one place here like this. I've been to Rajagaha, right? Or Rashke is another name, Rashke. Beautiful place. That the Buddha actually taught one of the famous sutta is the Heart Sutra, the Sin Ching, right? And there were other teachings there to the people of Rajagaha. A very beautiful, serene place. It's one of the places of the Buddhist pilgrimage. Right? It's one of those places that you visit. So now let us go on to slide number 6 now. Oh, that is 6 number. And I tell you, right from young, Siddhartha was full of metta and compassion. Right? So there are a few events that show his compassion, but I picked this one, right? So once he he was in the city of Rajagaha, right? And then what did he see, He saw some fire burning on the altar, right? And there was this king, I told you, the king of Magadha, that country in northern India, was with a group of priests, King Bimbisara, that during that time they follow the Brahminism, the early form of Hinduism. And these Brahmin priests, they are not Buddhists. They follow Brahminism. They have their system of beliefs and so on. And they had their prayers and they were chanting hymns also. And they also worship fire. And actually, they also, some groups did this animal sacrifice, they believe that, if they slaughter and kill an animal, offer to the high god, offer to maybe Wan Tian Ong, Brahma, the high god, one of them, and the other gods. So then they will be blessed. And the god will give them all those blessings and what they wanted. No, so that's why and today also you have certain religions that practice this animal sacrifice, right? They sacrifice, they kill the cow, kill the goat, and so on. Those days they even sacrifice the human beings. I don't know whether this was still taking place in certain parts in Africa or what. To sacrifice human beings. Maybe secretly also you might have certain cult groups that do that, sacrifice the child in order to get part echo number from the spirit in the graveyard or whatever. It could have happened, right? So then Siddhartha saw this. You can see the picture. That the leader of the fire worshippers, now you could see also this picture here, right? This leader, at the time they would use a sword, very sharp sword. So when the leader of the fire worshippers lifted his sword to kill the first sheep, of course, it could be also a goat, right? So Siddhartha stepped in and quickly stopped him. He was full of compassion. To him, killing was a terrible thing, an act of cruelty, right? So then he was so 庄严, and also King Bimbisara respected him. He could see the good qualities. That's why he asked him to stay also. So he told the king not to let the worshippers destroy the lives of the poor, innocent animals, right? And then also Siddhartha explained. He turned to the worshippers and told the worshippers also. He said, life is extremely precious. All living creatures want to live just like people. That's very true, isn't it? That's why we Buddhists don't encourage you to pursue hunting as a hobby, because it involves killing the animals, isn't it? Needlessly, for fun, for thrill, right? So, you say, just as the living creatures want to live, we people also want to live, so we respect the life. So he was very convincing with his way of explaining. So the king, of course, agreed. So this picture, gives you an idea of the animal sacrifice. This one is just an animation cartoon, you see. And today, you have people still doing that, Well, in some religions, among the Chinese or maybe, among the Muslims or other religions. So there are people who do that. They sacrifice the animal to pray to the god, right? So, among the Chinese people, they will have the pig slaughter or the the chicken slaughter and then offer to the gods, the deities, right? So Buddhist, of course, is a no-no, right? That, you are causing suffering and pain to the living animals, and then to give to the god. And the gods actually don't require all these things, right? The god, they are full of love and compassion. They also would not know. So because they don't understand this delusion, uh, and today also you have also certain religionists that will kill off people who don't follow their religion or whom they consider as sinners. It's terrible, isn't it? Killing. So now let us go on to the slide number 7. And then actually Siddhartha Gautama, after stopping the killing of the sheep or the goat, because King Bimbisara followed the advice, and then stopped the killing. Then he gave a little bit of Dhamma already also. And it's an important thing about karma. So if people expect mercy, they should show mercy. That means if, when you are in trouble and you are going to get a punishment or terrible suffering, and you also hope that other people will be merciful, so you should show mercy also to living beings, living creatures, isn't it? You want compassion, you also don't want to be killed or tortured. Likewise also, you must not torture or kill other beings. And this actually pertains to what we call the law of cause and effect. It's a moral law, you can say, the moral causation law, which actually can be summed up in an easy way. Good begets good, bad begets bad. Just as those who kill others will in turn be killed. Right? So if we expect happiness in the future, we must not harm any creatures. Whoever sows suffering will reap the same fruits. Even in Christianity, you have that very, very good saying or teaching, you reap what you sow, right? So you do something bad, something cruel, then an act of cruelty or suffering will come to you. In fact, the Buddha preached about this in other suttas also, why people have, uh, short lives, and then suffering with a lot of ailments or sicknesses. This one in also, I think I've done this also in another presentation, maybe under the Hokkien presentation. So when he talk about all this, actually, he gave all this first. Then the king was convinced already. So this speech completely changed the king's mind. And also the minds of the fire worshippers, the people who believed and wanted to kill one, they also were convinced already. So in this way, the king could stop the killing ceremony. And I told you just now already, it was after this, then he invited Siddhartha to stay and teach the people, right? And then, he being the king Bimbisara of that country, Magadha, it could give a lot of food, isn't it? Could even provide a very comfortable shelter, all those good things, comfortable. But Siddhartha declined because he had not yet found the truth. He wanted to get the truth of suffering and how to get rid of suffering. The suffering of old age, sickness, death, isn't it? So he politely declined. But the story goes that King Bimbisara asked him, okay, after you have found the truth, can you please come back? So actually he did go back actually to preach after his enlightenment. But that is maybe another part of the story already. So this picture here shows the scene of the karma, right? What goes around comes around. Do bad, bad comes to you. Do good, good comes to you. This is the working of karma, the law of moral causation. This is the Siddhartha explaining to the king and the other people, the fire worshippers. So Siddhartha left this place, Rajagahala. So then he was thinking he would go to seek out, to go to learn from the wise people. During that time, there were wise, cultivated Brahmins. They belong to the Brahmin. And they were also searching for the truth, and they had reached good spiritual levels, but not yet enlightened. They had actually practiced cultivation and then reflection, and some who practice asceticism. I mean, we come to that afterwards. So he went to see one wise person by the name of Alara Kalama. Here you could see a drawing to show that Siddhartha went to learn from this Alara Kalama. And Alara Kalama had actually done meditation and reached very high level like the jhanas. So Siddhartha stayed with this Alara Kalama for some time, and he studied very, very diligently and practiced. So he learned from this sage or wise teacher all that the wise teacher could teach him already. So sooner he was a very special person, right? A Bodhisattva, no, to be a Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama Buddha, no. So he knew that he could not learn anything else from the teacher already, right? So he had to go on to find the truth. So he had learned meditation to a high level and all those some of the teachings of Brahminism also. That's why you find later on the Dhamma, there are certain aspects the Buddha tested and verified through. They quite agree with some parts of the Hinduism or Brahminism. So although he had learned meditation, how to make his mind very calm, he could reach very high level. But he still did not know what is the way to freedom from all suffering, how to get rid of suffering. So he thanked the Alara Kalama and left to find another teacher. Now this one is just a picture to show, right? That Siddhartha, learning from a wise teacher of the Brahmin caste. So it's just a picture only. Now let us go on to the next one. Slide number 9. Then Siddhartha went to study under another wise teacher by the name of Uddaka Ramaputta. This one also very, very fantastic, He had learned the meditation, practiced the meditation, and also he got psychic powers already. But still he was not enlightened yet because he had not found the Dhamma yet. And so Siddhartha also learned all the meditation, all right, and also some of the teachings according to Brahminism. So he learned how to make his mind very still and empty all the thoughts and emotions. Very high meditation levels, in other words, beyond even the ordinary 4 jhanas, higher than that also, capable of psychic powers also. But still, he could not understand the mystery of life and death. He could not understand why there is suffering. He knew that there is suffering, right? He could not understand the cause of suffering. And is there an end to suffering? And if so, what is the way to end suffering? So he had learned all from Uddaka Ramaputta. In fact, Uddaka Ramaputta knew that he was a fantastic student, and he, on account, I think if I remember, even invited him to stay and take over his place because he was getting old already, to take over his place as a teacher. He had a lot of followers also, right? But Siddhartha declined again and thanked his teacher and left because his goal was to find the truth, to be enlightened actually. So then after that, Siddhartha Gautama was thinking, I have to find the ultimate truth by myself, by my own effort, and using whatever wisdom I have, my thoughts, all this. Actually, he had all this buried inside because, in a previous life, he was a monk under the previous Buddha, Kassapa Buddha, So those things were already there. So it was a matter of time to get the conditions for those teachings to come out again and with the right practice. So that was his search. And that search would take 6 years. So then he left and wandered again, all right, to find the truth. Now, I told you that he had reached very, very high states of meditation. Could maybe, levitate also, got psychic powers, all those things he had, but still had not found the answer to end suffering, how to end suffering. So now let us go on to the next slide, which is slide number 10. Now, when he was wandering around that area, that time there were also, you can say, hermits or the holy people from the from the Brahminism lah. It's an old form of Hindu religion, and there were many people also like that, no, right? So you could consider them as monks also, but not the Buddhist monks, but you can say Hindu monks or Brahmin monks, and they were wandering along various groups, India, a very spiritual place, though. You will find so many religions born out of the country of India, right? Hinduism, Jainism, right? And then also the older form Brahminism, and then later on Buddhism, right? And then Sikhism also, Sikhism. So you have many others lah. So very spiritual place. People want to seek the spiritual truths. And these people, they had families. Of course, they look after their wives and the children. But after a time, when they're older already, when the children grow up, so many of them, follow this practice. They say they would sort of renounce to leave the home or to go and practice spiritually to seek the truth. And some of them became ascetics. These ascetics under asceticism, the people who believe that if you want to find the truth and be reborn in heaven, then you must torture your bodies, make the thing, terrible to experience the suffering of the body. After you can, torture the bodies, you see, all sorts of ascetic practices. And their belief was this, that you have to suffer, sort of to wash away their sins. So you could see, some would always stand in one leg for months or what. Some will put up their hand for a long time. There were cases until don't know how many years or what. The hands could not move down already. Right? And there would be some who would keep their fingernails and never cut and be so long. All right, many, many times. We went to India, even was in Nepal also, that we saw until today. We still have a few people like that. Like, for example, here, sleeping on a bed of nails, right? Nails. This one, I just show a picture like this. So they had all these practices, but actually we know that this is delusion already. But the Buddha thought that, this was a way that he actually should try also. Because it was their belief that the more they suffer in this life, the more pleasure they will receive in the future when they are reborn in the heavens, and they would have paid for all their sins. That was not, later on in the sutras, the Buddha explained that it was not the case, right? They could not even know their previous lives. So how long would they practice this, isn't it? And then there were some that ate very, very little, right? Some stood on one foot for a long time. Some would raise their hand. Others would sleep on boards of nails, sharp nails. All sorts of things. This one show hanging on the tree. These are the ascetics. They practice asceticism, self-torture, thinking that they can get the truth and be reborn in heaven. I remember it was in Nepal, Kathmandu, we saw one so-called, they call it the sadhu, holy man, right? So he was, like standing on one foot, and then also, there was, maybe a bowl, people who put money also, and things like that, But later on, then we found out that he was a fake, because after that, he behaved differently already, so we could see that maybe there are fakes also, but there are actually these ascetic who really torture themselves, right? So then the Buddha, he thought, because he still could not remember the events that took place during Buddha Kassapa's time. So he had to try the various things to see whether he could get the truth, right? So the Buddha also practiced asceticism, and that It's shown, I think, in the next slide. So now it's slide number 11. Yeah, you see, Siddhartha also tried to become an ascetic, right? And so which means that he tried all sorts of ascetic practices. In the holy scriptures, you could get, or maybe in the Vinaya also, the monastic code of discipline, that there were accounts of the various practices that the Buddha had already tested all those things up. Terrible, I tell you. More than nobody could really match his striving. He thought that I could practice this lah. So he tried lah. And so many years ago, he tried ascetic practice. To the extent that he reached a stage where he was so very, very thin. He hardly ate. One account said that he only ate 1 grain of rice a day. These different accounts, they will tell you he will starve and so very weak. Right? Because he thought that if he practiced very hard enough, then he will become enlightened. So he, the things that he learned from Kassapa had not come out yet. Right? So the present conditions, the present life, you could, follow this what people until the time comes that you will find the truth. So he was at a place at Uruvela, the place, Uruvela, and it was near a river and a village. So that time, there were actually 5 other men living there. The first 5 disciples later on you will see. And they became his companions. So together they practiced, and they too practiced the asceticism. And these 5 who later became the disciples, right, were Kundana, Badiya, Wappa, Mahanama, and Asaji. So they also had reached very high levels because they also learned what the Brahmin priests or the Brahmin hermits taught them, or very deep meditation and so on. But they still were not enlightened. So they still went on practicing asceticism. Right? Just like the Siddhartha did. This one, you could see the picture, right? They were so very thin. Of course, they also might have some discussion and so on. So Siddhartha went on like this for more than 5 years, I think. Asceticism was practiced, and he nearly died also, to the extent. So let's go on to slide number 12. So for 6 years, he practiced the various forms of asceticism. For 6 years, all these pictures show these things, you see, right? Wow, this one you see, so terrible, these are all drawings. This one you see, so thin and so weak and so on. So Siddhartha practiced the various forms of asceticism for 6 years. So he reduced his eating more and more until he ate nothing at all. Actually, most accounts will say that he ate only 1 grain of rice. But the important point is that he really starved himself. Right? He starved himself until he became so thin, the skin became dark, the hair started to fall because he lacked nutrition, isn't it? Right? And he was very, very weak already. But still, he had that determination. He would not want to give up the practice to search for the truth. He had that very strong will and strong determination to find the truth. According to this account, which one I got from one of the sources from Buddha.net, right, that one day while he was meditating alone, so weak, he fainted. He fainted. At that time, a shepherd boy with a goat walked by. And then he helped Siddhartha. And he realized that without food, Siddhartha would die very soon. So he quickly gave Siddhartha, fed him some warm goat's milk. But there were other accounts, and most accounts would, this one is from this book, the account. And then account would emphasize this situation where Siddhartha, so very weak, he went to, you wouldn't say a river, you can say a stream or things like that. And he was so weak, even though the river or the stream was not very deep, that he sort of fell in and could not get out already, so weak, and then the water was flowing, and then there was this lady, a woman, also in the rural area lah, Sujata, the name, and this account said that Sujata, because he was so very weak and so lightweight already, Sujata also could lift him out from that stream, otherwise he also could die, right? And then gave him some milk, right? Milk with maybe honey or things like that, milk rice or things like that, right? So gave him some food, and that's how he gained the strength. So you see here, you have some variations in the account, right? This account talks about a shepherd boy. Other accounts talk about the shepherd girl, maybe. Doesn't matter. But anyway, he really practiced asceticism until he nearly died. And then he was rescued and then given food. And then Siddhartha took some food, so it became better. All right. In this account, he says Siddhartha regained consciousness, began to feel better. Then he began to think, you see, this method would not give me the enlightenment. I could have died, isn't it? With hardly any food, or the other account, he could have drowned, So he realized that without this boy's help, or if he had been the other account, without Sujata's help, he would have died before attaining enlightenment. What a waste. And then he started to think, what would be a way, right, to get enlightenment? And the account would show that the memory would come, right, of meditation. They remember that even as a young boy, 7 years old or 10 years old, some accounts give 10 years old, some accounts give 7 years old. But anyway, that thing happened under the jambu tree. He could meditate and reach very high level. So you remember that incident. So I think that will come in part 3 already, I think. So anyway, this picture, this show, this shepherd boy, going to help Siddhartha, who was in a terrible state. In this case here, the account where he fainted, he could die, or he could have drowned in the river. Whatever it is, there's the consistency that he really suffered and was on the verge of death. And then he took some food. That part is all consistent. We agree on all that. That's the most important. Because when things are written, you find some things are added and different people will add different things, right? But the thing that runs through, you find all consistent with all the description. That one is the thing we should take is factual, you see. Like Siddhartha marrying at 16, and then the Plough Festival. You read any source, whether it's from this set of writings or the Chinese Buddhism or the Sri Lanka version. So we take those things. Now, so let us now go on to slide number 13 now, all right? So then, from then on, Siddhartha knew really that he had to eat in order to practice. Just now I already said that if he had gone on like that, he would die, isn't it? Hardly any food. So now he began to eat. And until today also, you have Buddhist monks practicing eating one meal a day. Right? Or eating one meal a day. No excessive eating, restraint in the eating. And that is very true, very good, because when we went for meditation retreats some years ago, right, we also have this sort of practice. Control the amount of food, right? We had, in the retreats, morning breakfast, 7 o'clock, and then lunch before 12, noon. And then after all, that's all, right? And, then you practice. Then you find you at least give your organs a rest. People nowadays overeat, how many meals are breakfast, and then got tea break 10 a.m. Then got lunch again, then after that you have again tea time, and then dinner, and then after that supper. Wow, 5 or 6 meals a day, No wonder, people's health deteriorating, overeating, the poor organ suffering. So the monastic way, you find they cut down the amount of food as restraint. That is a very, very good thing for successful spiritual practice. So, of course, he ate now many monks still eat 1 meal a day, and they are quite healthy. Their health was completely restored. So then Siddhartha knew already, right, that asceticism was not the way to enlightenment. He tested all this already, isn't it? So many ascetic practices, no time to describe to you. If you want to know, you can go and read the scriptures, right? Or listen to Ajahn Dhamma Buddha's talks. He also had talked about these ascetic practices of Siddhartha Gautama, very long, 6 years of all those terrible practices. And today you still have people, and during that time also have people, who have these funny beliefs that, right, they, like in Jainism, or their ascetic practice, they cannot eat, of course, apart from meat, they cannot even eat fresh vegetables because they say got life there, and then they must only eat the dry vegetables and so on, until the health affected. And then there are, people who practice to the extreme, that they go for arms round also, right, to wait for food. And if they see a pregnant lady trying to offer, they will not take because they say after that the baby got not enough food. And then also if they see some flies around, they say, no, cannot take the offering because the flies after got no food, or the dog. So a lot of all those deluded beliefs which are not wisdom things, right? So Siddhartha, his mind became very clear already, right? That he really knew that these ascetic practices to torture the body would not lead you anywhere. And then now we know that actually there's the middle way. To torture the body and suffer like that, all this, your mind will be affected and you cannot have clarity and wisdom arising. On the other hand, if you indulge in senses, in the senses, including sex, right? Or excessive eating of food, or hearing of all those fantastic music, or sleep on water beds, touring here and there, right? Eating non-stop, rich food, all those luxurious things to make the senses titillated, to get so-called pleasures and so on. That also is going against the spiritual way when it's not. So it's the middle way, not the extreme, right? So his 5 friends continue with their ascetic practices, but later on when they saw that Siddhartha, he started to eat already. He had given up. Wow, he had become ready. They thought that Siddhartha had become ready, greedy already. Last time, just eating maybe just 1 grain of paddy on the cow said, all right? And now, wow, 1 bowl of the food, of course, once a day, he could eat so much more already. So he had given up his ascetic practices already. So they decided to leave him alone, right? So that's how these 5 friends got separated, right? But later on, the next, maybe, I don't know, whether this one will take some time, a few parts that will happen to these 5 friends, right? It's a very inspiring story, I've read how many times already. So, of course, this account, you go to India, you will see this shrine, they call it the Sujata shrine. There was one occasion, again, the versions differ, right? So, so there was this account. I think there was this person, Sujata, right? Maybe a cow herd, that tended to the animals and so on. You have females, cow herds and shepherds also, perhaps. So one day, this Siddhartha was found still meditating, right? But one account said that time he was ascetic, right? So very, very, so at first Siddhartha, the village girl, thought that it was a tree spirit, because it was not this, like what this picture would show, right? So then later on he found that actually, oh no, he's not a tree spirit, he's a human being, all this. Then she offered food, right? Actually, the food, most accounts would say that it's delicious milk rice, not honey, I don't make a mistake. It's milk rice porridge. So that was what. And there were accounts also that Siddhartha, encountering this Sujata, and Sujata make a wish and so on, that she would want a child or something like that. All those, some of the versions also come with very different type of minor details. But we knew that this Sujata actually encountered the Siddhartha Gautama. That was before the enlightenment. In fact, when we were on a pilgrimage, we did visit this village, where Sujata was staying. And then we even went to the shrine. It's not really a big temple, it's just a small shrine. And they had the statue of a lady that represented Siddhartha. Sorry, represented Sujata, right? And then, of course, also they might have images representing Siddhartha. So actually, this you find in various versions of the life of the Buddha, whether from Mahayana source or from Theravada or Vajrayana Tibetan. There are not so many different sources that you find these accounts still there. So, a person that has studied the various versions and then pick out those things that are consistent throughout all this, then you can say that this will be more authentic. But the scholars and all those who have done research, archaeology, and so on, they all would have come to the agreement that the most authentic, right? The accounts in the various scriptures that they have studied, the scholars, that the most original would be the Pali Canon, under the Theravada tradition, and reduced to these 4 books. Later on, one more set accepted. The reason was this: they found the evidences through the Asoka pillars. Asoka, the king Asoka, had all these teachings, everything engraved in the pillars. So when we went for pilgrimages, so we did see, the Asoka pillars and the language was Magadhi language, very close to Pali and Sanskrit. That language, not in English or Chinese. They all were translated. So there was this historical archaeological proof that originally there were actually these 4 books of Digha Nikaya, which is the long teachings or long discourses of the Buddha, and then Majjhima Nikaya, which is the middle length, and then after that some Yutta, kindred sayings, and then Anguttara, and one more is the Kudakala, which has the Dhammapada. I mentioned this before. So anyway, as Sujata, according to this account, offered the milk rice and wished Siddhartha very well, good wishes that he will be successful in his quest for the truth, for enlightenment. So that was this. This one just a very touching scene, right? So, this story, just and what are the things that might have been added, and the actual account, yes, Sujata did offer the food to the Siddhartha. So now we go on to the last slide, release slide number 14. Now, as in the first part, I also basically use similar words for the aspiration, right? But the background, I changed the background, right? The background showed this, you can see Buddha, right? Very contemplative, always pondering and thinking, right? Not like most people, they want to jolly only, isn't it? So now let us make this aspiration that if we study, reflect on the life of the Buddha, may we be inspired. Actually, I've read the life of the Buddha, different versions for how many years already? So many times in various forms, comics, also listen to Dhamma talks and so on, right? And I find it very inspiring. Every time I read, I don't get bored. It's very inspiring. So you too, if you want to walk the path, right, for enlightenment, you try to be inspired by the life of the Buddha, the events. There are movies made also, right? And then on the YouTube, you can just check Life of Buddha. You can see lots of versions, even cartoon versions also you have. So then after that, very important, you have to make this aspiration, right? That may we strive on in the Dhamma to end dukkha. Actually, later on, you see, of course, it became the future parts will lead to the enlightenment and then the important teachings on this life of the Buddha. And you can see that running through is this message only. And the Buddha, I think, had said, there's one thing only I teach, and that is dukkha and the cessation of dukkha. That means there is this dukkha. You can call it suffering, problems, conflicts, grief, misery, all sorts of terms lah. Unsatisfactoriness, stress, all these come under the word dukkha, you can say. So the Buddha found the way, isn't it? The Dhamma that he taught, the most important, as I mentioned so many times, the way to end dukkha. The most important teaching later on you see is the Four Noble Truths, and the only way to end the dukkha is to follow the Noble Eightfold Path. This will come later lah, but then very important things I keep on reminding, you see. So now we have come to the end of this part 2. Look out for part 3. Then later on, no problem. If you have missed one, you will just have to go to the YouTube. Then when you see this, then you can type in also, and you can get the other parts also. Or you can get it in the playlist. The playlist of my YouTube channel will list all those that you miss on also can watch, whatever you want to watch. Now there are, I think, almost or more than 100 or so many already. So you can check. So now, before we say sadhu together, I would like to thank all the students of Dhamma classes of Buddhist Sunday School, and also youth members, and then parents and grandparents, and then also all the teachers have done wonderful, meritorious work in teaching the Dhamma to the Dhamma classes at Buddhist Sunday School. So to all of you, I say thank you and sadhu. You have been very patient, right? You have taken time to follow this quite long presentation, and you have expended energy, and you have also practiced mindfulness and concentration to follow this presentation. So we say sadhu to all of you. So now let us put our palms together and then say sadhu 3 times. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. To all who have followed this presentation, may you all be well, happy, peaceful, healthy, and may you be inspired by the life of the Buddha, and may you continue to practice the sublime Dhamma. The sublime Dhamma, excellent, lofty Dhamma. So take care.